Good, glad to hear it. Welcome to the first Monday night workshop of August. So, and then just as a FYI, there's only one Monday night workshop this month because we have an Omega 4, which takes the 2 weekends. So the second workshop would fall in between the weekend, and we don't want to break down the room. Too much of a hassle. Not to scare you about Omega 4, but it's a lot. How many people, anyone here who graduated Omega 1 yesterday? Excellent, let's give them a hand. Congratulations. Anybody here facilitate yesterday's Omega 1? Oh, it was nice to walk into graduation and not have to stay. Let's see, so the announcements are, we have an Omega, that was Omega 1 that just completed, so the Omega 4 starts in 2 weeks. It's 2 Thursdays from now. So what's the start date?
16th?
The 16th, thank you. Starts on the 16th, and then of course this Saturday coming up, we have the impact training, which I will be presenting on meditation, the many different forms of meditation available. Not that I'm an expert, I was just going to share some of the different ways that I've been taught on how to meditate. Are you standing to give me information?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Go.
on September, Monday night workshops on the 2nd and the 16th, and September 5th through the 8th is an Omega 1.
Okay.
And an impact training on the 21st of September.
Excellent. Thank you, Susan. I haven't come up with the workshop ideas yet for September. I was telling Susan that I've been dreaming about George a lot lately. And when I dream about him, he's in front of the room delivering a train, and I'm like, wait, what is he talking about? And I'm trying to write down, and I'm so trying to focus on writing down, I'm not hearing it. It's very funny. And then I'm like, he's dead. He shouldn't be up there. I know his body was cremated. How did he get his body back? And I get wrapped up in that whole thing. And then I lose sight of what he's talking about. So I think it's funny. Poor guy's still trying to get a hold of me, and I'm, huh? All right. So this evening, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to stay seated because I'm still not 100% yet. So welcome to another Monday night workshop. Anybody know what tonight's topic is? Darn it, I was going to see if you didn't know, I'd just make one up. You're right, it's the habit of habits. I found this quote, actually I found some paperwork from George that I borrowed a lot of, but there was this one quote in there that I thought was very funny. It said, "The unfortunate thing about this world is that the good habits are much easier to give up than the bad habits." That made me laugh because I thought, oh yeah, I can relate on that one. So the first thing I'd like to do is make sure everyone has someone to chit-chat with and talk with. I want you to have a conversation with your buddy on habits, whether or not you think you have healthy habits or destructive habits. So have a conversation with your buddy on habits. Go ahead, please. I'm going to interrupt you for a moment. I'd like you to make sure that you can at least describe 3 habits that you know you are aware of. 3 habits. So make sure you have a conversation that you can describe 3 habits. Go ahead, please. May I have your attention, please? Next part of this, I'd like all of you to go to the board and write down your 3 habits. Just grab a magic marker and put them up on the board, please. Come visit me in the front of the room. On the board, just write your 3 habits. All right, now, you said, hey, yeah, I'm making smoothies for me. Anne-Marie, all right. Bad thing you have to explain your jokes. So, the first thing I'd like you to do when you look up at the board, without any judgment, is look at your handwriting. That is a habit. The way you wrote right there is what you're accustomed to writing. Each of us were taught how to write, well, I think they still do this, cursive as well as print. And I only see 2 cursives up there. Everyone else, oh, Nicole's kind of a combination. But most of them are print. So that's the first thing to consider, that even something as simple as your handwriting is a habit. It was created when you first learned how to write, and you're the one who expressed yourself. Now, I can tell you my handwriting has taken huge turns. When I first learned how to write, you know, they had the little thing with the dotted line in between the lines, and you had to hit the top and the bottom. and the small letters had to reach the dotted line in the middle. Nicole, I don't know if you remember this, you're probably behind your age, but when we learned how to first learn how to write, it was on the paper that had the dots in the middle, and you had to practice. The capitals had to go from top to bottom on the 2 lines, and the dotted in the middle, the small letters had to go in there. So I used to write that large, and then I had the habit of writing really tiny because I could write a lot more on a page. So I wrote really, really small, annoyed the heck out of my teachers. And then the cursive writing I did not like at all, so I intentionally massacred it so that I didn't have to do it anymore. It's like, whatever. I never mastered the Q. Remember the Q? It looks like some Z looking thing. I never mastered the Q, and there was some other one, I think the F or the G. I never got that one. So I remember I intentionally did not do the cursive because I did not like the cursive. Even today, it's a risk for me to try to write cursive. My handwriting has, as I said, it's adjusted along the way. Like, I remember my E's used to be the 3, a backwards 3. That's how my E's used to be, but now they're a C with a slash in between them. So I'm aware that I've made mine greatly different. Even my signature, which your signature is a habit. So some of us really work on doing a perfect signature. In other words, like, line, we're done. I don't know if that's out of just convenience, frustration, or progression, that we don't need all the letters. We could just, that's me, a little line. I remember hearing the stories about doctors and their signatures and their handwriting, and then when I finally saw a doctor's, I was like, oh, that's what they're talking about. And I always wonder, how did the pharmacist know what exactly the doctor is ordering? Because it looks like jib-jab to me. I can't figure it out, but they always seem to be able to produce it. So welcome to the thoughts in my mind. So the first thing is your handwriting. And then if we look on this, we have being late, gratitude in the morning, being negative, touching my hair, which is a good tick, making smoothies, yoga, on the computer for too long, going for coffee often, and scratch the back of my head, another good habit, eating fruit in the morning, stopping by to buy coffee, staying on the computer too long. What a judgment up here. Starbucks, yoga, thought patterns, too much TV, too much clutter, too much junk food, checking technology often, letting cat free eat, lack of filing, eat mostly healthy food, consider others' point of view, and like everyone. Those are nice. Who are you? I'm be friends with you. All right, coffee, snooze, omega, chasing men. Work, sleep, and eat, watching TV, playing computer games, eating junk food, diet, cleanup, change, and then annual physicals, eating nutritious foods, and drinking 8 glasses of water. You do that? You go, girl. Can't stand water. How do you do that? You just drink it straight water? Wow. I have admiration for Judy now. Or with lemon. Yeah, I don't like lemons either. All right, so here we have it, and most of the habits that you put up there are negative. There are a few that are positive up there, which is good. I wanted you to be able to see the distinction that we have. Now, what I'd like you to do is, if you haven't done this yet, talk to your buddy about the origin of this habit. See if you can remember when you very first started the 3 habits that you put up on the board. Go ahead, please. All right, I'm going to interrupt you for a moment. So if you think about habits, they can be something that you started or something that was passed on to you from your parents, or traditions or cultures that we have. For example, my love of Starbucks is Nicole's fault. I never drank Starbucks until one day Nicole said, you should really try this. And I don't like coffee, but I tried it and I was hooked. So it's Nicole's fault that I am addicted to Starbucks.
No responsibility.
It's true. You're the one who started it. Except she had me drink a white chocolate mocha. It was the first one that I tried. Do you remember it was so cold? That's the only reason why I drank it. It was because I was freezing. Or was that you, Susan?
No, don't. It was Nicole.
Because there were 6 years I wasn't drinking coffee.
It was there sometime. But anyway, so habits can start with a friend. Your habits can start from your parents, relatives. As I said, religious traditions as well. Going to church, blessing yourself with the holy water. I never understood that, but that's what you did every time you walked in the church. Hand in the water, bless yourself, with the holy water. When you go up to the front of before you sit in the pew, when you go up facing the altar, you kneel down before you sit down. Still didn't understand why, but did it because that's what we always did. Traditions, many traditions, Thanksgiving is a beautiful example of habits. We eat turkey and corn on the cob and whatever else normal people eat for yams, sweet potatoes, cranberry sauce. Excellent. So that's a good habit, traditions. Christmas. What do we always have for Christmas? No, I mean the tree. Not on food anymore. So the tradition, we have the tree, then there's the Christmas wreath that you always put on the door, the decorations, the insane shopping, Black Friday right after Thanksgiving. All of those are habits, but they're part of our culture. So, as I said, just cultures and traditions. Then I was thinking about, easy habits that we have, like there's certain people who can't handle difficult situations, so they run away. Or they go into the relationships they know aren't going to really work, but this way they don't have to work hard. Or there's certain habits like the twitching of the head, scratching, the twitching, the shaking of the foot, unconscious habits, nervous gesture. That could be habits as well. Habit of criticizing ourselves, that's a big one. I wrote that one down. Constantly criticizing myself. So judging other drivers. When I drive, I'm judging the other drivers on the road. That's a habit I picked up. Honestly, I don't mean to make this a judgment, but it was New York. You yell, scream, judge the other drivers. That's part of the driving experience. We were in New York City a couple weeks ago, or last week I think it was, and it was really funny because the kids are like, they honk horns a lot. They go, yeah, that's all you do, honk horns. We hear people screaming and yelling. We had this one guy cussing from the moment he started walking across the street, screaming at the cab driver all the way to the other end. And I just look at the kids and they're just like, welcome to New York. So again, not to diminish New York, it was something I grew up with. You just honk and scream when you're driving. Driving fast was a habit. Why? Because I like driving fast. It's exhilarating. So that was a habit I created instantly. And then you justify and rationalize your habits. Well, there was nobody on the road. Well, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. No one's paying attention. So then I thought about preferences. How all of our preferences are actually habits as well. As a matter of fact, I wrote down clothes. The clothes that you wear are a habit. I've tried this. I've gone a couple years ago, well, it's got to be at least over 15 years ago. George and I were talking about habits, and he said, try wearing clothes you normally wouldn't wear. So at the time, I never wore dresses with flowers. New York black, that's what we wear. So flowers. So I went out and bought flowered dresses in colors I would never wear. Green and orange, and I mean really, and I wore them intentionally to try to break a habit. And I did it for 30 days because that's what George would say. That's what it takes to break a habit. After 30 days, I discovered I do not like flowered dresses and I got rid of them. So I tried it, and what I ended up doing is falling back to what I liked, my preference, which was eventually a habit. The same thing with shoes. You could get me to try on any kind. I cannot wear little flats, like the shoes I'm picking on Nicole today, but the little closed-toed flat shoes, I can't wear those. No matter times I've tried them, I can't. They just don't feel right, look right. So I know I've tried that and it won't work. Same thing with friends. I gravitate to the same types of friends. My circle of people are always about the same type of individuals. Food. This is a big one. I'm a picky eater. I'm a really picky eater. I'll be the first one to tell you this. I've tried to try different foods. That's funny, I've tried to try different foods. I've tried different foods. I do not like foods that I do not like, even though I try. Those of you who've been in the program with me before. Sardines. I don't care what you cover them with, they are disgusting and I will not eat them. I have tried to like them. I have tried to swallow them. I can't do it. I just can't do it. Choose not to. Choose not to do it. So even though I've attempted to try different foods, I always resonate back to my preferences. And my preferences end up being habits. It's what I feel comfortable in. I don't have to think about. I know that when I go to Starbucks, I can just rattle off my drink and I don't even think, half the time I don't even think. As a matter of fact, today when I went in there, I looked at the woman and I said, did I say soy? And she's like, yeah, oh, okay, I wasn't paying attention when I rattled off my drink. So that's a good picture of how something turns into a habit where we're not even aware of it anymore. There are people who have the habit. I met a woman one time who refused to turn left. She drove through the city making right turns only. She's terrified of turning left. And it became a habit for her, so she learned how to find the one-way streets downtown. If you've ever been downtown driving, there's a lot of one-way streets. She learned how to get herself around with only right-hand turns. That was impressive, very impressive. So when it comes to habits, I was thinking about the idea, do habits control us or do we control habits? Are they beneficial or not beneficial? Can habits make a contribution? Are they necessary for me to live through life? Is it necessary for me to have a habit? So this is a question that I've asked George. So I wrote down, it's a simple question without a simple answer. Many habits are necessary for physical, emotional, and mental health. And the key word is health. For my health, there are certain habits that are necessary. For example, I'm allergic to dairy. For my health, not eating dairy, that's a habit now. So there are some things that are necessary for health. There are some habits that we have, for example, the habit of not being around loud, crowded screaming. I only have one ear, throws me off. For my health, it's necessary for me not to be around that. It's necessary for me not to choose violent, aggressive individuals to be friends with. For my health, my sense of stability. So there are certain things that habits can be very beneficial for. And what I did today, and while I was thinking of this, and in the years that George and I have talked about the idea of habits, I went through my library and to the favorite authors that I default to. So I went to Manly P. Hall, Gurdjieff, who was the founder of Fourth Way Teachings, and Ospensky, who is his student, and then Torkham, of course, and of course George. I used the four people to put together this piece of paper. Because if you were to go on Google, everyone has their own opinion of habits. Webster's dictionary is different from my.dictionary.com, different from Wikipedia. So everyone has their own different definitions and advocation for a habit. Some people say habits are good, some people say habits are bad. There are those philosophers who talk about the idea of rising above a habit, turning a habit into a benefit for you, or eliminating the detrimental habits. So it's a big collection, and I by no means want to present tonight the way. I'm just going to tell you what I found and let you come up with your own solution. Me personally, I feel like that habits are the stepping stones to my expansion. If I have a habit that gets me through the day, then I observe the habit. And if I observe the habit and recognize that it is detrimental to me, then I have something to work on to rise above the habit. If I have a habit that I observe is beneficial to me, then I focus on it. Either way, I'm still focusing on it. One, to eliminate it, and one, to accelerate it. For example, I have Play-Doh here, different colors of Play-Doh. Now, when it comes to habits, what they are is just an impression. George defined a habit as a repeated behavior that has impressed the invisible forces that live in the body in such a way that they automatically call for that which they are accustomed to. So it would be as if, in honor of George, I have this branding iron somebody had given George. It says GA. Not that he had a cow or anything, but up in Calgary, they just gave him a branding iron because there are a bunch of cowboys up there. So if I take this and I impress it in, I'm just going to press it lightly. So if I impress it lightly, you barely can see the GA. So that's a light impression. And that's what habits are. They start off light. But if I were to continue, time, there's another impression. Ooh, that one came out good. If I continue to impress it, you'll see that the impression begins to get deeper. And then if I continue, so whether this be a day, a year, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years of having a habit, I can make a deep enough impression that the Play-Doh doesn't come off. I can make a deep enough impression. I can make a deep enough impression. Hold on. You get the point. I can make a deep enough impression that it sticks.
Smashed it.
Get it? It sticks. Here, pencil. Hold with me. Come on, let go. there we go. I can make a deep enough impression that it has pretty much defined now the Play-Doh. You can see that. Even if I try to put another impression on top of it, you can still see the GA. Even if I try another impression on top of it, you still see the GA. Now if I continue with the circle, you'll see the circle, but you'll still see the GA. So that's a picture of what happens when we have impressions, and that's what habits are. That's, according to George, it's an impression. Now George used the term ethereal body, trying not to be New Age and drifting away from philosophy. The idea that we have an ethereal body, something other than my physical body. So those of you understand the electromagnetic spectrum up there. We have the visible light, which is where we all exist. In the visible light, it's 7 levels. We also say the 7 levels correlate to the 7 levels of me. The physical is on the bottom, then we have the emotional, the mental, the intuition, and then the top 3 we often call our higher self, Atman, Monad, and Divine. Now, when it comes to those 7 levels, think about the impressions that we are making. We predominantly make physical impressions. Then the next one up is emotional, as well as mental. But those are predominant impressions. Now, George did a workshop, a study group, where he talked about meditation, visualization, and prayer. Thank you. His idea, there's involution and evolution. Involution is that we evolve into the physical. Evolution is that we evolve back up to the spiritual. Each one of them has 7 steps. If you were to make impressions with your physical, it is more difficult to go up because the physical is the most heaviest, I don't have red, but it's the most heaviest, dense part of me, physical. This is the most difficult to amend, is the physical impressions. For example, I saw somebody has sleeping late or being late. Sleeping is a good example of impressions. Have you ever had the experience where you had to get up at a certain time and you set an alarm clock? Let's say the time is 4 o'clock in the morning. The more you got up at 4 o'clock in the morning, what would happen within 2 weeks? You'd wake up before the alarm, wouldn't you? 2-3 minutes before the alarm. And eventually you wouldn't even have to set your alarm. George used to call this your internal alarm clock. However, what if you kept hitting the snooze button? What would happen in 2 weeks? You wouldn't even hear the alarm anymore. You would sleep right through it. I've experimented with this, it's true. Have you ever had it where you have the people where you put the alarm on the other side of the room just to get you up out of bed to shut the alarm off? And if you're not fully present, most of us climb right back into bed. So, or to have the 2 or 3 alarms going off in the room to get you to stop and wake up. So if you're committed to sleeping, you're not going to hear it. That's a habit. To break the habit of sleeping in, you have to force yourself to wake up and move and get going. But those of us, like the snooze button, that's just one of those things that makes it convenient for human beings to have that snooze button. So, drinking, this is what George said. Drinking coffee and smoking is a habit. The insatiable urge to drink coffee and smoke are not the basis of desire. They're the manifestation of a habit. It's a mental impression that was inscribed on the invisible forces that keep one bound to established habits. So I said physical first. Physical involves emotional and mental. So with the physical, drinking coffee, let's say that this little dude is coffee right here. So the physical is coffee. I've made an impression. Now if I want to change this impression, I don't know if I'm going to get that out of there. The dot, the line, and the circle. Look, I just made a new application. So here I have it, that's my impression. This is my impression here. It starts mentally, I need coffee. I feel coffee. And then my physical, I feel better when I'm drinking coffee. I've even had it where the migraines that I get, those of you who've ever seen me have a migraine, it's not a pretty picture. Migraines are incredible. But I've convinced myself, whether habit or desire, that my Starbucks fixes it. Now, I don't drink coffee. I drink chai tea with soy milk. Soy milk is not good for migraines. But somehow, every time I have a migraine, if I drink that soy chai, my migraine diminishes. I've actually convinced myself that something that wasn't good for me fixes the migraine. I'm well aware that the soy milk is what's one of the elements that's causing me to have the migraines, but at that moment that I have the migraine, the soy milk works. It doesn't make sense, but it works. That's the power of our mind, which I'm going to get back to a little bit later. So when we make the impressions, it's based upon a desire. We make this impression based upon a desire, which is a thought process. So think about this. Have you ever had the habit of tapping your toe? Or when the music is on? I saw this yesterday. A guy was driving a motorcycle and he's in front of me and his head's doing this. He had the helmet on and his head was just rocking. And I thought, yeah, he's listening to tunes. And his head's just rocking, and then he turns and he looks on this side. And then he turns and looks on this side. And when the light goes green, he stops for a moment, gears up, and then starts going like this again. I don't think he was aware that he was nodding his head. It's a habit. We hear the music and we start bouncing to the music. The same thing with tapping. Some people just have a habit of tapping. Nervous energy, I already talked about that as well. So the power that creates the habits, that part of ourselves, can help us concentrate our actions and thoughts to remove the habit. So the power that creates the habit is also the power that releases me from the habit. So it's the same power, which I'll get to in a moment. George says, it is much easier to break the twig than to uproot a great tree once it's grown. So think about that. If I'm aware that a habit is beginning, there's a star. If I'm aware that habit is beginning, and if I continue on with this habit, I'm aware, wait a second, this is not what I want to do. It's easier to change it now, to stop, go to square, let's say. It's easier to do that than if I were to have solidified the star. Then it's much harder to change this habit. It's much harder once it's already ingrained. So, therefore, one beneficial thing would be to stop the habits before they start. How do we stop a habit before it starts is the question. If most of the habits start unconsciously, how do I stop a habit before it starts? Have a conversation with your buddy about that. All right, if I can interrupt you for a moment. I'm not going to assume you all figured out the answer, so I'm just going to continue on. The idea of how habits are created, I just want to jump for a moment back to how habits are created. Almost everybody knows that. It's by repetition. When habits are a repetition of a certain act until we're able to perform the act without even thinking about it. That's a habit. Now I'll give you one of the habits I struggled with as a child, washing my face. It wasn't that I was afraid of washing my face. I had already developed the habit of washing my hands. You know, little kids, go to the bathroom, wash your hands before you eat. So washing my hands, turn the water on, wet my hands off, get the soap, lather up, rinse off. That's a habit. I no longer thought about it anymore. Just wash your hands, go in, wash your hands. So then came the task of washing my face. So go in there, mom tells me put the water on my face, water on my hands, lather up, get the soap, wash the soap off my hands. I still didn't wash my face because I'm washing off my hands. I can't tell you how many times I did this in a row where she'd say, no, Anne-Marie, you got to put the soap on your face. Oh, water and my hands again, get the soap, lather up, right back to the water again because it was a habit. It was the habit of washing my hands. I had not learned yet to put the soap on my face yet. One way my mom ended up helping was turning off the water. As soon as she turned off the water, it broke my habit of traditional soap lather. There's no water to wash, so the soap's still in my hands. Then put the soap on your face. That took me a long time to figure out. I must have been about 3 or 4 years old. I had not realized I was confronting a habit, and I was trying to break the habit of simply washing my hands. Very simple illustration, but true to measure. That's how we break a habit, is by creating another habit. So in order for me to break the habit of just washing my hands and washing my face, I had to stop just washing my hands. Well, I still wash my hands when I go to the bathroom, but I'm talking about when you wash your face. So when I'm washing my face, I don't rinse the soap off. I wash my face. So that was a habit that had to be created, but I had to confront one that was already in progress. Another example of when you go to school for the very first time. Those of you who remember going to school for the very first time. We're accustomed to hanging out all day with our mom and dad, and all of a sudden, we're in a different place where there's different people, and there was all these other kids. And then you have to learn the habit of being in school. Roll call, Pledge of Allegiance, then the first part where in kindergarten, you played your colored crayons, and then you have your snack, nap time, and you get used to being in school in kindergarten. And then when you go to first grade, you have to break that habit because there is no nap time in first grade. You go right into learning, and then you start having your subjects. And then if you think about the educational system, it really is a progression of changing habits. 1st through 6th is elementary school. Then when you get to 7th grade, you now choose your subjects, and you go to different classes. That's a whole nother arena. So we've already had the implementation of same teacher all year to now all of a sudden 7 different teachers. And you have to go to 7 different classrooms. This can be scary for junior high. And then junior high gets to high school where you actually merge a whole bunch more. And then you go to college where you're the one responsible for choosing the classes, choosing your education, choosing the times you go, making your own schedule. Because even in high school, you just pick the ones you want and they'll send back the schedule to you. In college, you're the one who said, all right, I remember the first time when I realized I didn't have to go to an 8 o'clock class. I was signing up for 8 o'clock classes and I went, what am I doing? So I actually had the option of rechanging and making my schedule to be more convenient for me. So that's a good illustration as well of habits that continuously changing. We have continuously changing. Now the habit of education, that's beneficial. But the idea that I'm learning, that I'm searching, I'm wanting to expand my capacity. We can take that education and easily transfer it into philosophy, into theology, into learning more, expanding my capacity, embracing, going from individuality to universality. I can learn to do that. Vocabulary, that's another habit. We start learning the A-E-I-O-U's, the vowels and the noun, the values. The vowels and the nouns. Then we make sentences, and then bridging off of the sentences, we make paragraphs, and then eventually we're writing papers and theses and so on and so forth. So it's an expansion of a habit that's beneficial to me. That's when we have beneficial habits. When we have detrimental habits, it's a little bit more difficult. As I've already said, the impressions. But here's what I want to do. I want to give you an idea. When it comes to a habit, I haven't done the triangle yet. So when it comes to a habit, imagine, like I said, a piece of clay. I know I'm playing with Play-Doh, but imagine if this was clay. If I do not change this, and if I leave it alone, and it turns solid, that will be cemented forever. The only way I can break that is to literally break the entire piece. So if I let this and not let it be malleable, not let it to be pliable, if it actually solidifies, like clay often does when you let it sit outside, it'll stay and this will remain the same. Have you ever seen fossils? That, like this, the body actually becomes part of the rock or solid, wherever it is. As a matter of fact, we went to the Museum of Natural History while we were in New York, and they had this great, the whole dinosaur room and whatnot, but they had this display that I'd never seen before. It was it like a crocodile or something? It was some creature that had eaten another creature, and it was fossilized, so you could see the second creature inside its stomach. It was amazing. And it was one of those, how a snake swallows things whole? So it was something like that. So you had the outside of this one creature and the inside of another creature that was, it was truly amazing. Sorry, I don't mean to gross you out, but that's a fossil. That's what happens. It's solidified, and it remained that way for thousands of years. Unfortunately, some habits may last that long too. I often wonder, how many reincarnations am I going to go through before I'm not addicted to Starbucks? Did they have Starbucks in the last life? Will they have it in the next life? So we never know if some of the habits that we bring forth, karmically speaking, if you believe in karma, it may have been something I'm bringing from my past life. Now, I don't know that, so I'm just going to stick with the moment I was born to the moment I ended. What I think about is habits. Some of the easy habits to define are arrest records. Our arrest records are very easy to define. Those are great habits. A reaction, boom, habit, I'm done. That's the way I'm going to be. From this moment on, habit. So reactions are a good illustration of habits. When it comes to, go back to George. So let's say if I leave this and it stays engraved, left alone, it's going to turn into a solid image. There's such a body, he calls it the other self, that will take impressions. It'll make the impression until it forms into a force. And that force is what creates the habit. In this way, many of our lesser noble qualities become everyday habits. Many of our lesser qualities become everyday habits. Judging, criticizing, going against our values, reacting. Those are lesser qualities, but they become everyday because I've solidified it. It's become part of my life. He says, undesirable habits can prevent one from evolving, since the invisible world, the body of ether, which he talked about, is the key to reality. Now that sentence captured my attention. The body of ether is the key to my reality. Well, what does that mean? Well, if the body of ether, let's say that the body of ether is connected to my emotions or my mental. I don't see them, but they exist. That's the key to my reality. Well, that's true. If there's an experience happening, an event, in Omega-4 we often mention this, there's a difference between states and events. My inner state of being and the outer event. When I'm having a reactive moment, I'm reacting to the event. It destroys my inner state of being. My inner state of being is knocked off. I might have a sense of stability. For example, when I confronted my first arrest record that I can remember, being attacked by a rooster. So I confronted that a few years ago. I went and stood in front of a bald eagle, which is about the same size as a rooster was to me. And at that moment, my arrest record dissipated. For 40-somewhat years, terrified of birds. Once I stood in front of the eagle, I rewrote the story. Birds aren't bad. This is a beautiful creature. She kissed me on the nose. Boom, done. So I rewrote a story. But my reaction to that bird, the rooster, I created a reality. All birds are bad. And lived as if all birds were bad. That was my reality. You may have a different reality. No, birds are sweet. Birds are nice. I don't care how many times you tell me that, all birds were bad. So once I have a reality, and once you have a reality, if our realities are in opposition, which do you think I'm going to solidify to? Mine, because this makes sense to me. This is where I come from. I can't conceive your reality. It doesn't make sense. This is why one of our greatest challenges when we get into relationships is to be able to embrace another point of view. Huh? You believe what? No. Some relationships, they get together and they try to say, no, you need to be more like a triangle, or you need to be more circular, and we actually cause harm by trying to manipulate people's realities. It's up to me to change my reality. So, when I get to the idea that my body is impressed with the false ideas and ideals, and then it becomes an impression that we carry with us into the higher realms. So much so that physically I was attacked by a bird. Emotionally, I got upset every time I saw a bird. Mentally, my mind would go blank. I can't think. So I'm carrying this up into the higher realms. I'd sit in meditation, and if a bird goes flying, blah! I'm gone, meditation destroyed. So we can travel up to the higher levels, starting out as a physical event. Actually, physically, emotionally, and mentally, they're all tied together. So for this reason, the wise sages and teachers of every age cautioned us not to live indiscriminately, to master our bodies and emotions, to control our thinking, and so forth, in order that we not impress our higher self with false impressions. That's consciousness. In a nutshell, to be conscious and aware of what I do. Easier said than done. Get in the car, arrive at a location, not even know how I got there. Habit. Just get in the car, drive, boom, I'm there. Ooh, how did I get here? Habit. So knowing that my job is to stay aware of what I'm doing and staying aware of what I'm doing, two separate subjects. So I want to address the idea of the reaction part, the doing and not knowing. It's like having a physical scar that remains on the body. I have lots of physical scars that have been on my body since childhood. They remain there. They've created impressions. I remember one time I was in upstate New York and I was riding around, at the time my second fiance, he had a motorcycle, so we were riding around the Finger Lakes. My first motorcycle ride. He does not warn me about the muffler. Anybody here know what the muffler does? It burns you! He didn't warn me about it. So we got off to take a break, and I leaned up against the bike. third-degree burn right through my calf. I didn't even realize it. I felt a sting, and it was like a 2-second, but it was a singe down to meat. I'm really getting gross tonight, aren't I? Sorry. Third-degree burn. Totally third-degree burn. The next time I got on a motorcycle, what do you think I did? Bah! It was like I felt it all over again. I had that impression already put on my calf. Every time I even came close to the motorcycle, my calf burned. It took a long time for that scar to go away. I still have little remnants of it where the skin is whiter in the center. It's whiter than the rest of but that's an impression. A burn is a good example of an impression. So that physical scar stays with me. And every time I am around something similar to that event, it pulls forward the memory of what occurred. Now, a lot of massage therapists will tell you body has memory. That when you're working on people's backs and shoulders and we're working on their knots, it's the body releasing. It has memory. It reacts. So your body will have memory to the events. So, when a person has been hurt or wronged, and they keep telling themselves and others about their injury, what do you think their impression is going to be? Did I stump you? So if I continuously talk about how I was abused and been wrong over and over and over and over again, what am I creating? An impression of being abused and wronged. I am creating this impression of being abused and wronged, abused and wronged, abused and wronged. Now let's just take for a moment. What therefore will I attract? Abused and being wronged. Then I complain about how I'm always abused and being wrong. So I continue to complain about always being abused and wrong and what will happen to my impression. It gets deeper. So when I get into that cycle of complaining about being abused and being wrong, telling everybody that I know about being abused and being wrong, I am creating this impression and therefore creates my reality. Back to the idea that the ether, the body of ether, is the key to my reality. So if I continue this, I will continue to crystallize this in my own forces, and this will become my reality, which may or may not be accurate. How does one rise above the destructive behaviors, habits, instead create constructive habits? So the first thing we have to do, obviously, is recognizing our habits. Easier said than done. Manly P. Hall says, enlightenment begins with a recognition of the need for self-improvement. So I must be aware, oh, this isn't working anymore. I've got to change. So that's the first thing. First step, enlightenment, being aware that I desire self-improvement. I no longer want to live a life of a triangle. I want to be a square. Sorry. So that's my thought. All right, I have an awareness. I have an inspiration now. He then goes on to say, it extends through the study of universal laws and principles, leading in the end to the practice of the life of wisdom. Therefore, I must begin to recognize the destructive habits. Self-observation and feedback are an excellent source of education. I'll say that again. Self-observation and feedback are an excellent source of education. We do not like feedback, nor do we like self-observation. Oh, we like to look and recognize the things that we like that we're doing, but don't tell me the things that aren't working. I'll let you know when they're not working. We get emotional about it. So that's another thing, is I must rise above the emotions. From the teachings of Gurdjieff was the founder of the Fourth Way. Gurdjieff said that in order for change to occur, we must think in a new way. So this is one of my favorite little blocks that George had. So here's an impression made. This is an impression, and let's say it's a block of clay. My hand's so big it doesn't even fit in there. So here's this impression, and it's a block of clay. If I leave this like this, this will how it will always be. Gurdjieff says that if I want to make a change, I must begin to think in a new way. Think something differently. So, in other words, taking that gentleman who saw his life as tragic and abusive, what if I were to look and say, well, maybe life isn't tragic and abusive. Maybe there's value to this. Maybe there's some growth that can occur because of this. Maybe when I look at it a different way, I can change the pattern. Hey, that was easy. By looking at changing my thinking, think beyond my mind. He says, retain the same mental attitudes, if I retain the same mental attitudes, the same prejudices, the same unchallenged viewpoints, the same fixed ideas and opinions, you cannot change anything in your life. There are those of us who desire change, but we do not wish to change anything. We desire to change, but no, this is the way it has to be. Well, this is the way we've always done it. I remember, let's see if I can remember this one. George told a story about how a family would always sit down and cut the ham in half and bring it to the table in half. And it was finally discovered, the husband said to the wife, well, why do you always cut the ham in half? Well, that's what my mother did. And the mother said, well, that's what my grandmother did. And the grandmother said, well, that's the way I was taught. And when they finally went back to it, the reason why the ham was cut in half is because back in the very old days, the pan was too small. You couldn't fit the ham all the way in, so you cut it in half. Put it in the oven, and from that moment on, the tradition of cutting the ham in half was born. Had nothing to do with the benefit of the ham, the tastier the meat. It was because the pot was too small, or the pan was too small. That's a good picture of habit. So thinking a different way. Get a larger pan. You can keep the ham together. I can't believe we're talking about ham. That's gross. So here I am. In order for me to have the first thing I must do is be open to changing my ideas. The mind must change first. I'm a product of our thinking. We say this in Omega 1. Who you are, who you are, your actions, your behaviors are derived from what you hear and what you see. That creates your thinking. Anytime you can see something differently and hear something differently, you have an opportunity to change your thought process. So if I want to change this, I have an opportunity, but it must start in the mind first. The desire, like Manly P. Hall said, Enlightenment, it's the desire. It must start in the mind first. Changing the mind must come before a different man or a different woman. This means I must first change my mind on feedback. Then I must learn to embrace feedback instead of run from feedback. We cringe at the thought of receiving feedback. Whether we pull an arrest record of being pulled into the principal's office or the parents who are making wrong, and we see that as a negative thing. Many people think feedback is negative. I'm talking about negative feedback. We take this as criticism. We take it as a personal attack when it really isn't. I was thinking about the idea, if only we were taught at an early age to observe and give feedback without emotion. It's like saying the phone is black. That's it. But what our feedback ends up being, this is an ugly black, or this is a stupid black, or this is a useless black. Like, we add adjectives to the feedback and make it be emotional. One thing that's really good about Mike Ovens, if you've ever had an opportunity to work with him, he doesn't get emotional. This is how it is. Boom, done. As a matter of fact, I looked up here, I knew exactly what his was. Work, sleep, eat. Simple, to the point. What else do you have? That's Mike. Direct and to the point. That's feedback without emotion. You know you're always going to get straight, direct feedback with Mike, and it's not personal. It's like, here, this is what you're doing. Boom, done. Some people consider that abrasive. No, you're supposed to sugarcoat it, make me feel better. Not that Mike doesn't care about you. As a matter of fact, Mike really does care about a lot of people. Just here it is, go, do it. You're on your own. So I was thinking about, if you wish to improve your golf swing. If you wish to improve your golf swing, I don't play golf. You record your swing and then review it. I know, I've seen people do this. I've had customers show me their golf. So they watch themselves swing. And then what do?
Swing that way.
They swing and say, oh, look, my elbow needs to go a little bit higher, or maybe I need to bend my knees, or maybe turn my hips. So by watching ourselves, we can improve our golf swing. By observing ourselves, we can improve our golf swing. The same is true of our habits. By observing ourselves, we can improve. By observing the habits that I'm displaying in my life, I can improve. I can say, yes, this is something I want to keep. Nope, this is something I don't want to keep. But I must observe. Observation has no judgment. Observation has no judgment. It simply is an observation. That's all. Once I find observation, then I can lead myself on towards the areas of improvement. Yes, I like this. No, I don't like this. Torkham talked about the 5 areas of habit that we must begin to observe. 5 areas that we must begin to observe. So I'm going to have you talk to your buddy. The first one is food. I'd like you to talk to your buddy about the habits that you have on food. Just talk to your buddy about bring your attention to the habits of your eating, the habits of your food and drink. You can do both of those, food and drink. Go ahead. May I have your attention, please? Food's an easy one to do, although most of the time we're not aware of that we're actually doing a habit. And as I already talked about earlier, about our preferences, I was thinking about the habits that I grew up in, 3 meals a day. That's what we grew up in, but then some people switch it to 5 meals a day. And then in the food groups, the pyramid, I grew up with the pyramid. You gotta have the meat, the starches, the vegetables. You have to have all meat and potatoes. Always have meat and potatoes. Yeah, believe it or not, I grew up eating meat. Anyway, so I also had the habit, fruit in the morning. Actually, we didn't have that much fruit when I was growing up, but now I have the idea of fruit in the morning. Or breakfast foods are only for breakfast. I remember the first time I had that bowl of cereal for dinner. Someone said, "What are you doing?" "I'm having dinner." "No, that's Captain Crunch. You're not supposed to eat that." "What?" "It's dinner." Or pizza. Pizza's always supposed to be for dinner. In college, I would have pizza for lunch. Or breakfast. It's left over from last night. Grab it out of the fridge. Cold pizza. I lived off of that. Didn't matter. But, the people, you can do that. Why not? So there's a habit created. Juice in the morning. Oh, here was something that was interesting. When I grew up, I ended up being the cook for our family, so we had a family of 6. I remember the first time I tried to make spaghetti for myself. How much spaghetti do I use? Because, you always use, the half a box or the full box. How do I do for just me? I'm counting out the sticks, 7, 8, 10. I mean, how do you know how much do you make? So that was huge for me to switch from going from cooking to 6 to cooking for 1. Like, whoa. So I ended up just cooking for 6 and feeding everybody in the house. Here, I'm making dinner, just eat something. To this day, I still overcook than undercook. I never really got the habit of just making it for me. So those are good habits. And then, of course, the coffee in the morning. That's the thing. Oh, coffee in the morning. Starbucks broke that one, where now you can have coffee all day and feel good about it. And then, of course, juice. And now the big thing is you're supposed to have a glass of water. Or I came across this one thing where you're supposed to drink 32, or at least 32 ounces of water when you first wake up. Is that, I don't know. Oh, what? Try to do that. No, not happening. Think of the habits of the different diets that go around. You have the grapefruit diet. Then you have what was the guy with the no carbs diet? What was him? The Atkinson's diet. You have the Atkinson's diet. Then you have the eat only fruit in the morning and vegetables in the afternoon diet. Then you have the diets where eat like a king in the morning, a prince in the afternoon, and then a pauper for dinner. And then eat your heavy meal at night because it gives you digestion. There's all these different ways of eating nowadays. Take the supplements, don't take the supplements. I mean, it's just huge. So eating, and convenience too, eating for convenience as well, has changed that. Eating on the run has become a habit for a lot of people. Mark and I were just talking about this the other day, or today. Leaving stuff on the top of a car when you're driving. Have you done that? We did it today. We left the mail on top of the car and we're driving. I hear something hit, and Mark looks in the window and you see the mail flying off the back of the truck. Which led us to a long story of leaving things. The funniest thing I've ever left on top of the car is a bowl of cereal. I used to have a habit, taking the bowl of cereal in the car while I'm driving. Yes, I ate a bowl of cereal while I'm driving. Not the safest driver. But there was a time where I put it on top of the car and I drove. I got about 3 blocks. I went, "Where's my cereal?" And and it was still there. It was still good too. So we have a habit sometimes of leaving things in inappropriate places as well. So those are good things to think about. Food is the first and easiest one to start observing because we eat every day. So being conscious of what we're eating is a great way to begin to start observing our habits. The second thing that Torka mentioned was sex. If you observe yourself, especially during the act of sex, you can bring about changes. Now, George talked about the many levels of sex. That was his desire, to bring attention that there's many things happening besides just the physical aspect of sex. So have a quick little conversation with your buddy about observation if you ever practice observing yourself while you're engaged in the act of sex. Go ahead, please. Okay, that's enough time. I'm kidding. Go ahead. I know this is going to be uncomfortable. Go. May I have your attention, please? It's not that I'm rescuing you. Sorry. I'm not rescuing you. I'm looking at the time. So when I was thinking about the idea of sex, well, first of all, as George mentioned on the many levels of sex, one of his big key thing was at the moment of an orgasm, if you can remember your partner. A lot of people don't think about that. But then you can think about the traditions of sex. There was a time where you didn't have sex until you got married. There was actually a time where you didn't have sex until you got married. That's long gone. Who knows when that last happened. There is actually a culture, George talked about this, I want to say it was either the Aborigines or some Indian culture, where the couple, once they decided they were going to get married, before they got married, they would live together for 6 months and have as much sex as they wanted to see if they were compatible. And then after the time was over, they would say, yes, we'd stay together or not. And miraculously, they never got pregnant and they never used any form of protection. It was just again, mind over matter perhaps, I don't know. But that was the idea. Have sex first, get it over with, see if you're compatible, and if you are, stay, and if not, part your ways, no big deal. No harm done. There was also the ancient traditions, I think this is in Hawaii, that you had to marry a virgin. The guy didn't have to be the virgin, but the woman did. That was, had to be.
How does that work?
I don't know, you probably want to be there. So, kidding. There was the tradition of sex where sex was for procreation. So there's a lot of ancient masters who would not have sex but once a year, or to, manifest the energy was, but the rest of the time they channel their energy up the Kundalini. So there's another philosophy, a tradition. It was a philosophy of using the energy instead of dispersing it down. You would disperse it and send it up towards spirituality. Again, another philosophy. These are traditions passed on. The next one that Torquem talked about is sleep. Now, how do you observe yourself when you're sleeping? That's funny. But you can observe your sleep habits. Do you fall asleep at the same time every night? Do you get tired around the same time every night? Do you have a certain length of sleep that's required for you? Has that changed throughout your life? Do you require more or less now? So have a conversation with your buddy about sleep patterns. May I have your attention, please? I was thinking about the idea of sleep, and as babies, when children are babies, those of you who are moms, you know this, every 2 hours they're sleeping. And for 2 hours you get about an hour break. And then the baby's back up again, feed them, change them, and then they go back to sleep, and then you get another break. So that's a sleeping habit, or mothers who have newborns have to develop a new sleeping habit, because you're not going to be able to sleep straight through the night until your child does. So we're adaptable. Sleep depraved. If you've ever had the experience of being sleep depraved, is that the correct word? Depraved or deprived? Sleep deprived. You go in depraved mode, impraved.
That's when you're going to have enough sleep to get that right.
Yeah. Not enough sleep can cause you to be foggy and focused. As a matter of fact, right now, if you're driving and you didn't have enough sleep, you can be arrested and get a DUI charge for not having sleep. If you fall asleep at the wheel, it's considered an offense now. So the truckers, as a matter of fact, they've straightened up the laws now so that 18-year-olds, you're only allowed to drive no more than 8 hours at a time, and then you have to have a 12-hour rest period before you can drive again. I don't know if the numbers are correct on that, but there's something along the lines, because being sleep, not having enough sleep, has the same effect as if you were under the influence. So sleep, lots of different concepts and ideas about sleep. I naturally was a night owl. My brother and I, during the summers, we would stay up all night, watch the sunrise, and go to sleep. There were times where I'd sleep 14 hours a day, mostly probably because I didn't want to be around everything else that was occurring, but I knew that I felt better at night. I operated better at night than during the day. My brother, my younger brother, is still a night owl. He'll do sometimes, and he can go for a long time. I think the longest he's ever had was close to 48 hours of not having sleep. That's insane. I won't do that. I think the most I've ever done is like 32, 36. So I'm accustomed to insomnia. I have insomnia at times, so that is a challenge, knowing that you try to go to sleep and there's nothing you can do. You do the meditation, you count the sheep. I've tried counting sheep, it doesn't work. So you count the sheep, you do the meditation, you do the sound music, exercise before you go to bed. I mean, the warm milk, the hot clothes, everything that you can think of to try, I've tried. Insomnia is just a part of what I'm going to experience, so I'm there. But there are times when I do go to sleep. Torquem actually wrote this. If you're going to find out how much sleep you need, the first thing you have to do is think about if the places that you're sleeping in are polluted. The cleaner the air, the better sleep that you have. the less sleep you require. But if the air is polluted, it requires more sleep. I didn't think about that. But when I thought about polluted, I also thought about energy-wise, because I'm more attuned to energy. So if you sleep in a place that has a lot going on, chaotic, it's more difficult to sleep. I had a hard time sleeping in New York. When I've been to Vegas, I cannot sleep in Vegas. It's insane. I cannot sleep. The energy there is just, I can't sleep there. So sleeping in a polluted place, maybe not just physically, maybe emotionally and mentally, can be the same thing. And then there are those who, under stress, instantly fall asleep because they can't handle the stress, so they just go right to sleep. So it works either way. You can be so stressed and not fall asleep, or so stressed and immediately fall asleep. It, again, all depends on the different habits that we've developed in our lives. But sleep is the third one. That's what he said. The third one to work on is sleep. The fourth one is your behavior. This requires a little bit more effort here, and here's where observation and feedback can help us. To observe your behavior, the way you talk, the way you greet people, the words that you choose, your actions, especially the way you walk when you walk into a room. Observe and change. Now, Torkin says it's not so much important that you change as it is what you change, as it is just to change. All we want to do is create a different impression. So it's not so important that we change the exact hand, it's just that we actually just implement change. That's all we want to do. It's just the idea of putting another impression in place. So talk to your buddies for a moment about your behavior, the way you talk, the way you walk, the way you greet people, the way that you interact with relatives versus coworkers, people in the supermarket versus people in the yoga studio. So have a conversation on your behavior. May I have your attention, please? I want to get to number 5 before we run out of time. Number 5 is your emotional nature, essentially your arrest records. That's what we call them in Omega. Our emotional nature. What are the things that fly off the handle for us? So your emotional body is built on past emotions that you've expressed or felt. I like what Torkin says here. When you have bad wiring, you often have a short circuit. I think that's cute. Yes. So my arrest records, I react. So having the bad wiring, in Omega 1, what we introduce you to is in order for us to release ourselves from our arrest records, we find the value. Once I find the value, I've thought in a new way, thinking new. So by thinking new, I've risen above it, I can release myself from it. So there's the value that we have out of that. Now, I'm not going to have you talk because I know we're going to run out of time. The question is it possible to create constructive habits? Absolutely. It's possible to create, yes, I did the Vulcan. Spock is here. Is it possible to create constructive habits? Yes. It is possible to create constructive habits. I was thinking of the simple things that I would do as a constructive habit. A morning gratitude greeting. Greeting the sun every morning, being grateful for 7 things every day. There's a habit of blessing the food. Or being and acknowledging the people in my life, making sure that they know that I love them. So those are positive things. The habit of meditation can be very beneficial as well. Now, question that occurs is, habit is directly tied to willpower. So the question is posed, do you need to have willpower to have habit, or do you have habit to have willpower? So that can be go round and round. It's kind of like, which came first, the chicken or the egg? One needs the other, and the other needs the other. So you need them back and forth. So when it comes to willpower, that's the development of constructive habits. We simply create a new impression. So remember, the body of ether is the key to reality. Torkin states, the higher or more advanced a man is, or woman, the more adequate a form he must create to enable the form to express the charge of his consciousness or soul. So in other words, the more I expand, the greater I expand, the greater my habits must be. They've got to match to what my observations are of myself. If I'm wanting to work on meditation, but I don't even understand how to close my eyes, that's not going to happen. So I have to, if I expand and understand closing my eyes, going within, that equals meditation. Once I understand meditation, then I can start working on meditation. Once I start working on meditation, I can start experimenting with the different types of meditations available. See that little segue into the impact training on Saturday? Which we will talk about on Saturday, the different types of meditation. So the greater my capacity, the more I expand, the higher vibration is required to capture my attention. I'm not connected anymore to the lower senses. I don't want to say that correctly. I'm thinking about George. George always used to say his love was the work. People would tell him, you have to go on vacation, you've got to go play, you've got to take a break. He didn't understand that because his vibration was different. He didn't have the vibration of hanging out with family and friends. That wasn't George. George's vibration was writing, philosophy, expansion, doing the work. So the higher his vibration, the higher his habit. Are you understanding that? So the higher my vibration, the higher my habit. The higher my awareness, the higher my habit. What I want to do eventually is, I mentioned the short circuit. So eventually I want to be able to be in control of my circuits so that I can produce the energy required for my path. Now, if I am only holding on to this and I'm not capturing it, there's no connection. But once I actually connect with my purpose, to say, or a habit that's constructive for me, then I'm in alignment. When I'm in alignment, I manifest light. Sorry for the cheesy illustration. But when I am in alignment, I manifest my light. When I manifest my light, then I find my purpose, my path, and I'm in the flow of life. When I'm not manifesting my light, I'm struggling. I'm off purpose. I'm trying habits after habits after habits. So again, the idea is, once I can eliminate all the habits, I'm just going to do this. Once I can eliminate habits, see, I have the habit of having everything symmetrical. Let's say this habit, hey, it still works. Crap. There. Okay. So if I have a habit blocking me, I'm unable to make my connection. So rising above my habits would be recognizing the habit and then the ability to dismiss the habit, then I have my connection. Sorry for the cheesy thing, but that just seems, really, that's a good picture of how habits prevent us from accelerating, moving on, expanding my capacity. I recognize the habit, eliminate, remove the habit that is detrimental to me, establish a new habit, and continue to focus on that. This does not mean I judge this habit. This habit has served me. This habit has got me to where I am. So I can express gratitude for the habits that I have. If I were to judge this stupid green block, I will not be free from it. It will resurface. Have you had those moments where all of a sudden you have great inspiration, great awareness, and then back to life again? And then another great moment, and then back to life again? That's because the things you've risen above, you still have energy on, still attachments, still judgments, whatever it is, and it returns. In order for me to eliminate this, just like washing my face, I must replace the habit. Not bad, not good. I simply replace it with another habit and focus on that habit. That's how we construct new habits. Constructive habits push one to evolve even faster and more positively. In fact, one cannot overcome the obstacles of evolution unless they form good habits. Finally, I want to leave you with one phrase from Manly P. Hall. The hours may seem long and the teachers cruel, but each of us must walk that path, and the only ones ready to go onward are those who have passed through the gateway of experience. That's what habits are, experiences. For us to rise above them, it can be hard, it can be cruel, we can see the people as cruel, but once I rise above them, I understand this is an experience that leads me on to the next level. That's what I'm going to leave you with. Thank you so much for letting me play around with you today and playing with my toys. We'll see you in a month. Thank you.